I remember walking, I'd been, I don't know, working in London somewhere, I think, and I remember being on the tube and walking up the escalator, and suddenly I was like, hang on a second, I'm walking up the escalator, what is going on? You know, I'd worked a full day, I had seen friends that evening, and I was actively choosing to walk up the escalator rather than stand and it take me up.
Welcome to Soulfood Sunday. And Soulfood Sundays is where I bring you some inspirational moments and moments of insight and transformation. And it's really the opportunity for you guys in the community to share some of your experiences and your stories. I am particularly interested in sharing here not just moments of like whole stories of recovery from chronic fatigue or big life transformation stories. We'll have some of those. I'm particularly interested as well in the moments of breakthrough. Be that something physical that you haven't been able to do for a long time, you're able to do, as a kind of moment of kind of realization of how far you come. But also moments of psycho and emotional breakthrough. Perhaps you've been really struggling with your inner critic and beating yourself up, and suddenly that's just starting to feel easier. Or you have got a really strong helper pattern and you just always put everyone else first. You manage to put a boundary down for the first time. You might think it's a small thing, but actually I think people learn a lot from those moments of insight and what supported those and how things feel different on the other side. So please do reach out. We've had lots of people asking for mini sessions, and we still have some options. People want to do those. But we've kind of put less of the word out around these moments of breakthrough or insight. So we'd love to have some more people reach out, and just for 5, 10, 15 minutes, we can record a little video interview. You don't have to give your whole name if you don't want to. But you can email jenny@theoptimumhealthclinic.com if you'd be interested in doing that, and she can help set that up. So for today's Soulfood Sunday, we have an excerpt from Nikkie Foster's interview as part of the Fatigue Super Conference. Nikkie is one of the psychology team at the Optimum Health Clinic. And in this excerpt, I ask her the question about how she knew that she was recovering. I think either recovering or recovered at that point. And she talks about, for the first time, noticing she was just suddenly walking up the escalator. It may sound like a small thing, but if you're used to being in London and that being a struggle and you're on the recovery path and you're careful not to overdo it, it's actually these kind of subtle moments actually tell us something's different. So she talks a bit about that, and also some of her love of psychology that came from her healing journey. So this is Nikkie Foster and some of her experience of realizing that recovery had happened. What were some of those kind of key moments? Like often there's certain people have certain things in mind that when I can do that, that's when I know that I'm recovered. And I know that for me, it was being able to go for a run without having any fear of kind of consequences. It was like this kind of almost like kind of rocky moment of kind of like running up this hill in near where I live now, actually in North London. But what were some of the moments for you where there was this kind of significant sense of, I'm on the other side of this?
I think a much more mundane moment than that. I remember walking, I'd been, I don't know, working in London somewhere, I think, and I remember being on the tube and walking up the escalator, and suddenly I was like, hang on a second, I'm walking up the escalator, what is going on? You know, I'd worked a full day, I had seen friends that evening, and I was actively choosing to walk up the escalator rather than stand and it take me up. So I think there were moments like that, or the first time where I was like, I've got the energy to be able to wear heels all day. That was the other moment for me. It was like, I don't have to wear clothes or wear shoes that just get me from A to B. I can kind of partake in the beauty again. So I think they were really small moments where probably nobody else who'd have been around me would have understood it. But I think anyone who's been through this kind of journey would really get it. And they were just, I just remember those moments with such fondness, you know. And so what it means now is every time I put a pair of heels on, I kind of go, yeah, this is really cool.
I'm somewhat envious. I've never had that moment of being able to wear heels for a whole day. So, and maybe also say a bit about some people may not be aware that there was a kind of coming full circle in this story, because you were qualified and working as a physio. You then got sick and you had to stop working. You went on this healing path, and then you decided then to do the practitioner training program. So you ended up going from being a patient to being a student to then becoming a practitioner with the Optimum Health Clinic. So just say a bit about that journey and what it's been like to kind of start to be on the other side of the equation, like running the 90-day programs, for example, in the same room that you'd been a participant of.
Yeah, I think it's been a really amazing part of the process, because I really feel like had it have not been for the chronic fatigue syndrome, I would never have come across my actual love of psychology. I truly, truly love it, which means I get to, work with people and do this on a day-to-day basis. I think that it is one of the most, feels that once you understand what the models are, why this stuff happens, it's one of the most logical conditions I've ever come across. And so it's really great being able to support people in the way that other people supported me, and just being able to see the benefits that people get from really understanding themselves even more, being able to live in the world much more from their heart, I think. Because I think what often happens is when we close down the very essence of ourselves. And just being on a 90-day program and being able to kind of explain some of these models to people and see their eyes kind of go, oh yeah, that actually makes sense, is just so humbling. And I think being able to see the resilience of people and the bravery and courage that people really go through facing themselves and facing stuff that they've been doing their best with for a really long time, it's indescribable. It's amazing.
So what would you say to someone, as we kind of come towards the end, what would you say to someone who is suffering from fatigue at some level, and maybe understands, obviously there's key physical elements, and perhaps through listening to some stuff as part of the conference, they've started to piece together some of those pieces and make a bit more sense of that. And perhaps they're where you were at the start in terms of psychology of this is just, I'm not open to that. That's not part of it. What would you say to someone that's feeling that way?
I think the first thing is it's okay to be frightened, and it's okay to not understand this stuff. That is really, really normal. And at the same time, I think it takes real energy to have defenses, to have protection. And yes, we need them. And they've served us really, really well up until now. And yet there is another way. And I think my journey was really about understanding what is the alternative. Because when we're able to identify with truly where we are and be authentic with that, and if that is, I'm really cynical about psychology, having a conversation with somebody about that, what that allows you to do is it allows you to process whatever hurt is there, reduce whatever defenses are there, feel safer, which means you have more energy, because actually your system can calm down and you live much more of an authentic life. But being frightened, being cynical, being angry that this might even be part of it, all makes complete sense and is completely normal.
Fantastic. I think that is so true. And I think that there's a kind of, it does, as you say, it takes courage to be willing to see things which are uncomfortable or difficult to see. But of course, I guess the irony is that it may be a bit more uncomfortable initially, but it's a lot less painful than not seeing it and staying stuck in the situation. Right. And you're obviously a living example, breathing example of someone who's been through it, come through the other side, and realized that psychology is not something to be afraid of. It's actually something to fall in love with, ultimately.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So I hope you found that clip inspirational. It's, people's stories, I think, are always impactful. And I think people often forget how much struggle, work, commitment goes to get to these moments of insight and breakthrough. But when they happen, of course, they're all the richer for it. Coming up tomorrow on Everyday Alex, we have Mindful Monday. And for Mindful Monday tomorrow, we have an excerpt from an interview that I filmed with Martin Elwood, who is a Buddhist and meditation teacher. Martin's a very old friend of mine, the godfather of one of my children, and we go back a long way. But in this interview clip, Martin's talking about the separation between being on retreat and separate from life and integrating kind of insight and mindfulness into the kind of the grit and the reality of daily life. I'm a really passionate believer in the importance of not just having experiences of kind of insight and awakening, but those really being grounded in everyday life. So that's what we're talking about in Mindful Monday tomorrow.